Connect LA to Great Expectations, Preparing for What's Next. As Tom and Luke mentioned, I'm Nekesi Moody, and I'm the editorial director of the Hollywood Reporter. We have an excellent lineup for today's discussion, and I'm going to bring them to the stage, starting with Cohan, who is on the board of directors of the Banff World Media Festival, and most recently worked as president of international and chief officer of growth at Nielsen. Then Jinny Howe, vice president of original series of Netflix. Miura Kite, executive vice president of global television at Participant. And Kathryn Tyus-Adair, Senior Vice President of Original Programming at Starz. Oh, I think I'm there.
Did I screw this up?
No.
Sure.
It's all good. It's all good. We don't have that much time, so I want to get to. Well, I have questions afterwards, but I want to get right into it. Last year was a bit of a time of flux for, I would definitely say, for the television industry. We look at 2020, 2021, and it seemed like there was just content, so much growth, and it seemed like there was no stopping. And then we get to 2022, and expectations changed. There was more focus from Wall Street on profitability, and there was more focus on what's happening with spending. And we saw some cancellations, some renewals, and just a different change. So I would love to talk to each panelist and see how you're feeling now. Like, what's been the most challenging time, and what do you see for 2023 right now?
Sure, I can go first, and thanks for having me. At Participant, we believe a great story, well told, can change the world. We're sort of bespoke. I mean, we're not a huge quantity, but we're about quality. So our mandate's still the same, to work on the best projects. We have really exciting projects in production and coming down the pike. But I think for us, it's we have partners on a lot of our shows, which allows us to do more. And then in production itself, just looking for ways to get the great content out there in less expensive ways. So yeah, and we have a few international shows as well, which is an interesting area.
How about you?
Yeah, I think for Netflix, for everyone, for the world, it's been a wild couple of years, and I think, yes, last year was pretty wild, especially at the start. I think what we saw at the end of the year was, some incredible shows coming out of the slate, and it felt like we were really ending the year with a bang, and it felt great with shows like Wednesday and with Monster. Just that, the business is still really thriving, and I think looking at 2023, there is this reacceleration and this enthusiasm to sort of, we feel like we're coming out of what has been sort of an unprecedented time, not just in the business, but in the world. And I think 23 really, just more momentum towards just great content.
Yeah, I'd add on that upbeat note, as the resident recovering content executive who dabbled for 3 years in research, it's a real, even though occasionally we as an ecosystem like to maybe react and think that things are better or worse, kind of worse, maybe darker. Happy to report that I think it's a really healthy time in the ecosystem. One, you have, I'll throw a couple of stats. One, you have consumers spending an hour more during COVID with media and technology generally, and in this kind of almost post-COVID period, that hour has stuck. Two, you have most of the key platforms still, according to Activate and Wall Street Journal research, still planning on growth in spending over the next several years, even though they'll rationalize, still planning on spending in terms of growth. And three, you have a real need for platforms, entertainers generally, to deploy original, real, new, splashy, original content in the form of series and movies. And so, maybe the last thing I'd say is maybe peak TV is slowing, but it's still a hell of a lot better than 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, in a lot of ways, for those of you that were in the business then.
First of all, I love Sean's statistics. I find this very encouraging, working for a buyer. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but
How do you feel?
how do I feel? The prospects were, I think it's been such a fascinating journey over the last few years. Just watching, we all got locked in, and we had, we as content creators and had this opportunity to have everyone watching everything. And even though it was a horrible time for the world, we also, we can't lie, we had people watching it like we haven't seen in a long time, I think across the industry. Then, people were able to start getting out again, thank God. And, but it definitely, we saw the effects. It's, it seems to me like common sense. You see the effect of people, being able to get back into the world. And I think that what we're seeing now is just, what was sort of starting out anyway, which is consumers driving, what they want to see, and word of mouth driving what they're hearing about seeing. And I think it all just behooves us as, as content creators to really set the bar high for what we're making, the stories we're telling, how fresh and original they are, the people who populate them and how representative they are, to keep the stories super interesting and new, and things that we just haven't seen before. But the other big change that we've all witnessed globally is just this change in economy and economics around the world, and people are having to decide, how they're going to be able to consume, what they're going to be able to afford to consume. So one of the big trends right now for us is, well, there are a couple of things, and by us I mean the industry, is we're looking at, grabbing people's attention early on. It's a big conversation. Does the slow burn work? Or do we need to be really grabbing people's attention so they're not running to something else before they get a chance to see how amazing the show is that we're giving them? And the other thing is talking to our producers about really making these shows producible, and talking to them about, when to be precious and when to really think about what is it I'm trying to tell you, and how can I tell you in a way that I can also cover it with the budget that makes sense for the, for the company that's going to put it out there, because end of the day, it's a business, and if the viewership isn't helping the business can't help the content creator. So I think everybody has to sort of just lean into what the realities are now. But the thing that's not changing, just like Miura said earlier, is we're all on this panel thinking we want to make great shows, period, and that hasn't changed.
You touched on a couple of things that we'll get to, from budget to what's resonating, but I want to know, as much for the content creators, what it gets a yes from you that maybe has your calculus changed as far as what you want to green light? Is it still what it maybe was a year ago?
Sure, I'll take that. I don't think it's changed. I do think it's become, in a competitive landscape, you're really looking for people who have bold visions and who really understand who the audience for the show is. So it's not just who do we think is going to like the show, who do we think is going to watch the show, but who's going to love the show, who's going to evangelize about the show. So I think we are really looking at engagement in terms of like how much people finish, episode 8 and they are telling everyone in their circle, you have to watch this thing that I just watched, it's amazing. So again, I know it sounds really obvious, but I think more than ever, we're looking for a passion and a real clarity of vision, and obviously the ability to execute on that.
And as far as engagement, Kathryn talked about the slow burn. How many creators, how many shows have the opportunity these days to have more of a slow burn? We see shows maybe getting canceled after a year, but you also see shows that, like Wednesday, that are immediate successes. So what do you look for when you're talking about success these days?
Well, I agree with what Jenny was saying about engagement. That's definitely one of the areas that we're, I mean, as an executive, when we're looking at those numbers, we're just like crossing your fingers and, yes, please tell me you finished this show and the next episode and the one after. Because we're a subscriber service, we're not dependent on advertising, we're dependent on subscribers. So we look at that as well. Is this show driving the subscription numbers? We definitely look at how much chatter there is about it. Are people losing their minds in social media about what happened last night on that particular episode? And quite often they are, and it's so much fun to see. So I think it's a combination of all of those things, really. And again, looking at, is it for how much it's costing to make this show? Are we justified with how much viewership? Because you can have a really passionate fan base for a show, but if it never grows and it's not really sizable, and the budget it's really hard to sort of justify that model.
When you're talking about budgets, what are you thinking about as far as how much we spend, how much you spend, not me, how much you spend on budgets these days? I mean, I think maybe a couple of years ago, maybe there weren't as many conversations about the per episode cost. So now, what seems reasonable? And can you really tell the difference if there's a shave of like a couple million, $1 million per episode?
I think we talk a lot about right-sizing budgets for shows. I mean, you have shows at Netflix which are, the Bridgerton universe, which is a very specific experience, and it's meant to appeal to a very large audience, and thankfully it has done so far. But I think we also have a show we just recently renewed called Mo, which is very, very different, and is so, so special, and so voice-driven, and so beloved by the audience that it has, it's speaking to. And again, just considering, it's not just budget, but who the show is targeting and who are we capturing those people. That's really, it's not the same measure in the way that we're considering success, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we are on a platform, so I take shows out and I sell them to people like Jinny and Kathryn. And we have lots of different budget ranges. I've worked on $200 million series in previous jobs, and then there are international shows that are, less than $1 million an episode that look quite good. So for us, we are, we don't have a deal with a studio or a network, so we can go anywhere, but we have partnerships with a lot of places where we've made a lot of things. Netflix is one of them. And so the budget varies on all of those elements of, is it period, is it the big director, is it the cast, above the line, yeah.
What are you finding that's resonating these days? I mean, when you look at what, we talk about people back outside, what are you finding that's really connecting with the viewer? And how often does that change from season to season, from year to year?
Yeah, I think people are definitely finding a desire for lighter shows, comedy, even shorter length. I mean, I find that in my viewing habits too, there are nights where you really want to dig into Chernobyl, and then there are nights where you want to watch Fleabag or something, or just something light. So definitely, I mean, and a participant, we do things that compel positive social change, but it doesn't mean that it needs to be dark. I mean, I think it needs to be entertaining first. But definitely levity, I think still, ever since the pandemic. And we're finding that most of the shows that resonate with people, they have some social impact element at their core. So especially with younger viewers, you don't have to, it doesn't rule out a lot of things. A lot of things hit on that in different ways. So, but definitely, and just unique worlds, things you've never seen before. So.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, I would say escapism is something, and I say everybody's idea of a good time is different, so that can be so many different genres and tones, which, we want to make sure we're speaking to those different audiences as well. But I do think that especially given what has happened over the last couple of years, people have really sought escape and refuge in television, and the ability to be able to escape into some of these worlds in your living room has been extremely important. And I think more than ever underlined, I think, the way when we consider from a programming perspective, what are the shows we should be pursuing, I think an additional consideration. Because that does seem to be something that everybody is very focused on and looking to television for more than ever these days.
I think, the bar is really high. People are looking for smart, a smart approach to how you're telling the story and who it is that you're tuning in for and coming back for. With us, our shows are also different from each other, and as an executive, we work on just such a range of things. My shows are anything from BMF to the Serpent Queen, and lots of things in between. But the common thread for them is, that they're character driven, and I think that it's definitely for how I consume content on not just our network but everywhere. It's about the people in the story. I come back for that, and for me, I totally agree with the escapism point, and it isn't necessarily, sometimes it's humor, sometimes it's the satisfaction of characters who get the win. I think we've been living in times where we felt like things are kind of out of our control for a while, and I think people are really going to be connecting with solving the mystery, with being, even if a character is an anti-hero, if they're really brilliant at how they go about their bad deeds, I think people will engage and come back for it. I think we see that all the time. So I think it's really, we're looking for satisfaction, we're looking for escape, and we're looking for fun, whatever that fun is.